Let's now connect with Congressman Darin LaHood here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk doesn't necessarily represent the Springfield area as much as he used to, but from the Peoria area in a new district, he is, of course, part of the majority Republicans in the U.S. House. And with that, as he said just before coming on here, a lot more responsibilities. Congressman, you are a lot more busy than maybe you were when you were in the minority. So thanks for taking time with us today in the short amount of time we've got. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Greg. Great to be on with you and your listeners. And I'm not happy to be losing Sangamon County, but still represent much of Central Illinois, and always enjoy being on your show.
So let's get right to it. We'll talk, of course, about the announcements your office made of new committees that you're going to be leading. But let's get your reaction to the president's State of the Union address from Tuesday night. He talked about everything from drug prices, casting aspersions on Republicans, a lot of back and forth and screaming back and forth from the floor to the podium. He talked very briefly about foreign affairs, didn't mention balloon, but talked about China. Your reaction to what the president laid out as some of his priorities?
Well, a couple observations. I was disappointed overall with the speech. He talked more about resort fees at hotels and baggage fees at the airport than he did China. He never addressed China. He never addressed the balloon that kind of leisurely went across our country, violating our sovereignty all last weekend. I mean, it seemed like the whole country was fixated on that, never addressed it. Never addressed the border. We've let in over 4 million illegal people in the last 2 years. Blatant violation of law. Never talked about that. So to me, that was disappointing on two of the biggest issues that I hear from my constituents. The other observation, Greg, is that, we have a new makeup of the government now. We have a Republican majority, and many of these issues should be dealt in a bipartisan way. I thought he would have reached out more. To me, it sounded like a re-election speech. And placating to the Democrats. There's plenty of opportunities that we can work together on, obviously on the debt ceiling, on energy independence, bringing down inflation, working on the border should be bipartisan. And of course, China has to be dealt with in a bipartisan way. And I didn't hear enough of that in his speech.
We'll talk a little bit about China here in a moment, especially with whatever you can share publicly about the latest in the spy balloon reconnaissance and the debris that's being collected. But your office announcing that you are the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence's National Security Agency and a few other issues here. Talk about these committees and the types of things that you're going to be hearing about that maybe, we may not be able to talk about here on the air.
Well, I'm thrilled that I was selected to be the chair of this subcommittee on the Intelligence Committee. The Intelligence Committee is vitally important to the oversight of our intelligence agencies throughout the federal government. We oversee the 17 different IC or intelligence community agencies. So everything from the CIA to the NSA to the FBI to the DNI, all of those. And obviously a huge amount of taxpayer money gets spent there. But more importantly, as we look at the malign activities of China, of Russia, of North Korea, what's going on with Iran and the Ukraine conflict, it'll be vitally important to be the chair of this subcommittee, to work with my colleagues. The other thing I will just tell you, Greg, the Intelligence Committee has to get back to doing the business of intelligence, working with our allies around the world, but also looking out for the best interest of America. As we've seen over the last 2 years, we got bogged down in impeachment. We got bogged down in Russiagate and some of these things. We have to make sure the federal government is doing what it's supposed to do in the intelligence sector. And I'm looking forward to playing a big role in that.
Well, and on that note, talk a bit, if you can, about how during the Trump administration, it almost seemed that the intelligence community, as a whole, not necessarily officials directly with the Trump administration, but maybe retired officials, right? They were in media confirming that 16 intelligence officials or whatever the number was, that the Russia collusion thing was real. You guys going to be able to provide oversight on those types of things of making sure that the intelligence community is not weaponized against the American public?
100%, Greg. I think what frustrated me and many others and many Americans is you had people in our intelligence agencies, also retired people that still had security clearances, that that were making decisions based on politics. So if you were of one political party, you were being treated differently than another. That kind of two-tier system in the intelligence community has no place. And so holding people accountable, making sure that doesn't happen, that's part of why we created this committee on the weaponization of the federal government, to expose some of that. I'm optimistic we can move beyond that and focus on what our jobs are and make sure that each one of these intelligence agencies are doing the job they're supposed to do, which is looking out for the best interest of America, protecting our sovereignty, protecting our assets around the world, and making sure that bad guys aren't doing anything nefarious towards the United States.
Congressman Darin LaHood with us on WMAY. And let's talk briefly about the spy balloon. What information can you share? We're seeing reports that there is a classified briefing today, and apparently there was a classified briefing yesterday. Totally understand there's some secrets that you can't share, but what does the American people need to know about what happened last week and what we know about this spy balloon, not just over the United States, but even previous attempts to have incursions in our airspace and violate our sovereignty?
Well, first of all, from my perspective, it's unacceptable what the Chinese did, a blatant invasion of our airspace and our sovereignty. And I just think the way that it occurred, Greg, you had this kind of leisurely float across the United States. We have significant military assets and nuclear assets in Montana. The balloon flew close to Scott Air Force Base in southern Illinois, went over a number of assets in North Carolina. And the fact that there were plenty of opportunities from the administration to take this down, particularly over Montana, particularly over the Aleutian Islands. So on many levels, we have obviously collected the debris field now. It's being analyzed by, our top military and intelligence services. But there needs to be answers on this. And, what are we going to do to hold China accountable for this? Those are all questions that hopefully we're going to get answers to. To your point, we do have a classified briefing this morning in Washington, D.C. that'll include many members of Congress on this. But I don't think the administration has been upfront and honest the way they should have. And we want to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
Well, and just on the spy balloon, we see the reports that they in an unspecified manner, somehow scrambled or compromised the ability for the balloon to report back to China. Are you confident that was done according to the claims by the administration?
Listen, I have a lot of confidence in our intelligence services. I believe what they tell us, but it's, trust but verify. There'll be significant oversight hearings where we get into the details of that and hear, exactly from witnesses in the Intelligence Committee just to verify that. The other thing that I think is worth noting, Greg, is what was the response from the Chinese? Their official response was this was a, quote, weather balloon, a meteorological balloon. Let's look at the track record of the Chinese. Chinese said that Putin wasn't going to invade Ukraine. They said, they only had 100 deaths from COVID. They said originally that COVID was started by the U.S. military, if you remember that. They blatantly lied to the World Health Organization. So they have been, in my view, deceitful, can't be trusted. So when they tell us it's a weather balloon, in my view, you can't trust that or there's no way to particularly verify that. And so I think we got to be very dubious when it comes to the Chinese. And I don't think this administration is taking them seriously. I don't say this lightly, Greg. China has a plan to replace the United States, and they are working at it every single day from a technological standpoint, from a military standpoint, from a national security standpoint, from an economic standpoint. And the sooner we wake up to that, the better.
Congressman Darin LaHood, last thing here, but real quick. Jeremy, one of your constituents from Peoria online says, tell Darin, as a Peoria local, I appreciate what he's doing. Wanted to convey that message to you from an online listener. But just touch on here the classified document handling. Seems that it wasn't just Trump. It was former Vice President Pence. You got the current president with documents. He's not really divulging much else on interviews. Do we have a problem with people taking classified documents, or is there a problem with over-classification of documents?
Well, we're reviewing that right now. I'm going to introduce a bill with actually a Democrat, Mike Quigley. We both serve on the Intelligence Committee to enhance the current statute and penalties for mishandling of classified documents. Right now, the criminal statute in place really turns on intent and knowledge. What we found, again, initially with both President Trump, President Biden, Vice President Pence was this sloppiness? Was this negligence? Was this an accident? It appears that it was not intentional or willful. There's nothing in the statute that deals with that. What I've proposed is we ought to add a $5 million fine, up to $5 million. We ought to be able to prohibit people from reviewing classified documents in the future, stripping them of their clearances. We need to add to the statute on that. Obviously, there's a special counsel looking into this. I'm a big believer in facts and evidence as a former federal prosecutor, so we'll wait and see what that evidence comes back with. The other point is it also appears there's a two-tiered system of justice. Why did President Trump, why was there, a search warrant? Why was there a raid? And with President Biden, we found out apparently in November, but they didn't reveal it until 6 weeks later. Again, there's a lot of questions there that I think people are very frustrated with. And so those are things we got to get to the bottom of. But we have to make sure that we review how we overclassify things, because I think we do that too much. Who in the chain of command is dealing with these documents? Should they be held accountable? It's unacceptable that these documents are found unsecured, unclassified, or unsecured in locations where our adversaries could get to them.
Congressman Darin LaHood, it's all the time we've got. Greatly appreciate you taking it with us, and we'll definitely connect again in the near future. Best of luck, all right?
Sounds great, Greg. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
You too. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News.